today we'll talk about MimbleWimble. MimbleWimble is a new protocol which is used for blockchain in blockchain architecture, and basically a lot of people are really excited about it because of the huge advantages, or at least interesting advantages which it could provide. And there are the two coins, Grin and Beam on MimbleWimble protocol, and their future is also the topic for debates all over the place. And so today we'll basically talk what is MimbleWimble, why it is so interesting, discuss some of the features, and hopefully it will be useful for you to understand it in a bit deeper manner. And if you are still wondering why this face of Harry Potter is here in my slide, is basically because MimbleWimble is the name of the spell which is in Harry Potter story. This spell is preventing you from speaking, so it's sort of shutting your mouth, which is pretty much similar to what MimbleWimble does, at least one of their features for Bitcoin transactions. And also, the first person who is proposed the MimbleWimble protocol is an anonymous one, and his nickname is Tom Elvis Jedusser, which is a French version of Voldemort, again another figure, another character in Harry Potter story. So a lot of the references to Harry Potter here, apparently they are developers of MimbleWimble love that, and there's sort of romantic issue here as well. And again, there are two coins already, Grin and Beam, based on this protocol, so we'll talk about them as well in the video. So what are the major features of MimbleWimble which can it provide for our use? So first and second, those are privacy and scalability, and we will talk about them in details. But first, let me summarize a couple of things. I must say that some of the data from my video I took from the talk of Andrew Poelstra, so you can refer to his slides as well. Okay, shortly, in Bitcoin transactions, old outputs sign new outputs, right? And outputs have script public keys that are independent of each other. In MimbleWimble transactions, outputs have only elliptic curve public keys. And I must say that this is the strong and proven cryptography, which has been tried and tested for decades, so everybody love that and trust it and so on. So the difference between the new outputs keys and old ones is multi-signed by all transacting parties, so those who are sending and who is receiving. These outputs, or transaction kernels, they're called transaction kernels, are the only thing that needs to be retained in the blockchain, which provides large space saving comparing to other blockchain. Meaning that if you basically can eliminate the rest of the data except the very last outputs, the differences between the signatures of the transactions, not the whole data you will just remove, but just leave some signatures of those transactions. It will save you a lot of the data for the blockchain. So the whole blockchain is smaller, but that means that since there are no transactions history, basically, or at least a lot of transaction history is eliminated, the MimbleWimble is scriptless. Although I must say that there are some attempts of making so-called quote-unquote scriptless script, which is sort of an option to make scripts anyway, but it's sort of not clear yet. So it provides you some privacy by default, and this enables complete fungibility without precluding the ability of selectivity to disclose information as needed. Fungibility meaning that since those coins which you have at the final transactions outputs, they don't have any history. So if some of the Bitcoin, for example, are found by the history of blockchain being used in some illegal transactions, that you may say that those funds are sort of dirty money and some kind of penalties can be applied by the government or something. In that case, as with every private blockchain, private cryptocurrency, those coins are fungible, so they are equal, and there is no such thing as better or worse coins from their history. And it also provides, like MimbleWimble provides, cross-chain atomic swaps, zero knowledge containing payment, and lightning channels, Tumblebit, and more. Okay, let's look at those in details. Again, kernel. It's a difference between outputs and inputs, a multi-signature. Okay, so if you look at the blockchain, we have inputs there, they have outputs, and also you may see that there are similar or equal actually inputs and outputs sometimes. So you can find those, and basically they don't add any kind of additional information to the blockchain except the fact of the history of transaction. So the transaction happened and you can leave it on blockchain, but you can actually delete this. And in this way, you will not make any threat basically to the safety as soon as you for the blockchain as soon as you cap the kernel. So what you can do later is that if you look at the whole blockchain, then you probably can find most of the transactions having previously, most of the unspent transactions having previously similar inputs, which means, inputs and outputs, I'm sorry, which means that you can eliminate those pairs, leaving only the kernels and the unspent transactions like this, which basically gives you a lot of the space in the blockchain would be removed. So the size of the blockchain will be smaller then, and also that means that all the history, although it was there, is, I wouldn't say that it is eliminated because the kernels are still there, but it is like details of the history can be removed as well. So this is basically called cut-through process, transaction cut-through process. And also, if you'll aggregate the transactions, like find not only the exact transaction, but like make them together to match. Like if you, I've sent some coins to you and to third person, then we can aggregate it. It will look like one person sent to another person. So this is also can be eliminated. So eventually, again, you will have the final elements of unspent transaction with kernels, and that is it. So that is how you get scalability of the blockchain. This sounds great, and in fact, that privacy may be somehow not I wouldn't say it is would be, well, what I'm going to say, you can still trace the history if you will start from the beginning of the blockchain. There are applications, there are methods which are basically tracking the history of the blockchain from the beginning. They will make a separate database or separate blockchain which will duplicate the whole blockchain which you look at, and then the whole transactions can be checked eventually from this duplicate blockchain. So if you'd only use that way, then privacy is a sort of a privacy, but not the one which you want, not an ultimate privacy. So let's look at that deeper, how basically they can push it to the ultimate scale. And in order to do that, we need to understand what are those other privacy features and algorithms allowing you to get some privacy in other coins, because there are a lot of similarities, but we need to see those very fine differences in order to understand the feature. So many private coins here, like Monero, Komodo, Pivx, Zcoin, Zcash, Verge, a lot of coins. So, but all of them are based, their privacy features based on a very few principles. First is, I will cover basically like the most used and most robust ones. Of course, there are more features, but anyway, so like in Dash, there is a tumblers, and now there's a coin join technique, which is basically a mixture of transactions of the funds within a sort of a pool, and then you'd have the a lot of the inputs and a lot of the outputs, you don't know which one is which, because the funds are sort of mixed with, between each other, and you can return from this pool your funds, and still it is sort of possible to trace that, but it gives you some basic privacy. If person wouldn't be that that careful, that hard trying to find what are the roots of those transactions, then probably you're good. But in principle, it is traceable. So second thing, more robust, like was used in Monero, is ring signatures, previously crypto node. And what is here is basically we have the sort of a ring of transactions which are signed only by the one participant, and it's really hard to understand which is which, and then you are hiding the senders addresses senders addresses in blockchain in that manner. Also, it is upgraded to ring CT, and also they use range proof and bullet proofs to hide the size of the transaction, and stealth addresses in order to hide the recipient addresses. So we will cover a bit later. But the thing is, also there is another way to do that in for example Zcoin, and it called zero coin algorithm based on RSA cryptography, and basically the coins are removed and then appeared in another place, another address, by using this encoding, and well, it's actually it's still cryptographic process per se, but anyway, so it doesn't that matter. It's not that matter, but the thing is, you're using cryptography in order to hide the transaction process, and it depends on the way you like which algorithm you use. Here it is RSA, and in Zcash, which is called zero cash algorithm, you use ZK snarks, which is based on KOE, which is knowledge of exponent assumption by basically variations of Diffie-Hellman assumption. And this is another very strong cryptography which is used here. Also very similar, and all of that, including generation of stealth addresses, and to some extent range proof and bullet proofs, are the whole single zero knowledge proof, so-called process, when you basically don't know, well, if you look at the blockchain, you don't know anything about the transactions unless you are the person who is sending this transaction or who is receiving this transaction. So it's really secure, at least at the current level of the cryptography development. So in order to understand that a little bit deeper, let's basically look what it is and how MimbleWimble and Grin and Beam can what can they offer for that matter. So zero knowledge proof works in this way. For example, this is me, and I would like to send you some coins on our blockchain, and these coins should be sent as, and not only the coins on blockchain, but anything like on the open channel, that everybody will see this transaction, but they will not know who is sending to whom, and at least what is inside this transaction, what is inside this mystery box, what is inside this safe. So in the same way, I need to send you a code to this puzzle, so you will be able to open it. But how I will be able to send you the code if everybody else will able to see it? So I need to send you in the way that nobody except you will be able to see it. It's really tricky, but there is an elegant solution which was found not that long time ago, and basically it works. it lays in the basics of the public key cryptography, such algorithms as I already mentioned, RSA, Diffie-Hellman, Hellman, and so on. So again, how this works? It works based on two, several, but generally at least two, like the most, not two, I shouldn't say two, but the most common or well-known algorithms, mathematical tasks, which is factorization and discrete logarithm. So in factorization, there is a sort of a mathematical problem when you have, for example, a multiplied b and it's equals c, and if you know a and b, you can find c easily, especially if a and b are small, even without a computer. But if you want to make an the opposite way, so if you know c but you don't know a and b, it's sort of easy if a, b, c are small, but, well, relatively, but if those are huge numbers, this task is not so trivial. It's called factorization. And the same way, if you increase the size of these numbers, then finding the logarithm, which if you probably know from school, when you have a and b and you make b power of some x and it's equal e, then x is your logarithm. And if a and b are huge, then it's really, and x especially is huge, it's really hard to find x just by knowing b and a. And in the discrete logarithm, a and b are x is integer, where a and b also often integers. So basically you have some additional mathematical step when you find the remainder, and it's called modulo, written mod. And basically what does it mean is, if you have, for example, 5, let's just look at this the simple example, 5 equal 3 power 5 modulo 7, it means that you have 3 multiplied by 3 by 3 by 3 5 times, and then it is equal to 243, and then you divided it by 7, and then it would be 34, and the remainder is 5. So that's basically it. This is the 5 here, right? So pretty simple. But if you have this in this way and you don't know what is here, what is this x, it's really hard to calculate it, and the bigger those numbers are, the harder it is to do it. And of course there are it's more detailed if you look at from the sort of mathematical point of view in a more robust way, but this is just the basics to see what is happening right now. So let's look at this example deeper, and basically this is illustrating how the Diffie-Hellman protocol works. So we have Alice and Bob. They are trying to send each other some information. So they are picking some common data, which is in this sort of equation. This is G and P. Here are there, so you can transact it to on the open channel. Everybody know that, like those two exact numbers, but they don't know this one, and that is why they cannot basically calculate, of course, this one. So then what they do is, let's just take an example 5 and 23 for G and P, and then you can see that how it works eventually. So they pick this G and P, everybody tell those numbers to everybody, and then Alice picks another number. This is her private key, as they call it. So for example 6. So she picks 6, and then she calculates this equation. And apparently, apparently you can calculate it. It will be 8. So this big A, capital A, is another public information which is told to everybody, including Bob. Then Bob does the same, but he picks his number B, which is, like, for example, 8. Could be another number, and then he calculates his B, capital B, which is 19 in that case, and also tells to everybody. So now everybody knows 5, 23, 8, 19, this G, P, and some kind of A and B for small a and small b. Now Alice and Bob are calculating their secret code, secret number, and that would be capital B power of small a modulo p, and then it will be 2 for Alice, and Bob does opposite thing, capital A power of B modulo p, which will be again 2. Basically, you can prove it from the logarithmic point of view that they are equal in any case. And now everybody know that b, everybody know that a, but nobody knows still s, because in order to get this secret code, you need to solve basically this equation, and it is quite complicated if those numbers, this G, P, A, B, are big. So if they are very huge numbers, then even powerful computers cannot calculate it that easily. It will require enormous amount of time. So if someone else will try to find this number, probably he or she will fail. So realistically, no, it's impossible. In that way, Alice and Bob can share the information, because again, they can find everything from those two numbers. So they can make the opposite mathematical operation. Okay, so this is how it basically works for Diffie-Hellman. It works in a very similar way for different mathematical mechanisms, but just in like operations are different, but principle is the same. We are telling some common data to everybody, and then we still have a secret code which nobody knows except the one person who is getting that code, who is having that code. So by implementing this in MimbleWimble, we can sort of hide any kind of information as soon as we have both Alice and Bob sharing their data together to each other, and then nullifying this data, including the amount of transaction. So if the amount of transaction from Alice minus the amount of transaction is Bob is multiplied by anything, it will be still 0. So this part of the equation in the brackets will nullify anything. It will prove that basically the transaction is valid. And then you can, of course, it is very simplified, so you can add additional parts here in order to make it in a more robust way. But basically the thing is, by cryptographic approach, you can hide everything that you want as soon as you have both, it's very important, both Alice and Bob online. And in that way you would have you have in transaction in Bitcoin blockchain looks like Bob received for example $5, and the fee was $0.1. In MimbleWimble it look like Alice has sent Bob an undisclosed amount of money, unknown, so nobody knows how much, and Alice's balance decreased and Bob's balance increased by that exact amount, and they have the same fee, some fee. So this is sort of a part of the feature. But then when you use CoinJoin, as we talked about in transaction aggregation, that becomes even more secure, because you don't know who sent to whom. They also, as far as I know, they also implement range proofs, and together with the cut-through technique, which we discussed before, it becomes very, very complicated. Well, basically it nullifies all the data happened before, but still you say, okay, we have some trackers of the blockchain which in principle can help us to understand that. So whether it's privacy, yes, and we'll talk why there is and how can MimbleWimble solve this issue. But also you would say that wait a minute, this is still zero knowledge proof, which is used in Zcash, in Zcoin, and moreover in Monero you basically have the same ring signature, which is hiding the sender, the same as similar to MimbleWimble. You have confidential transaction by the bulletproofs. You have stealth addresses, which is basically generating some temporal address by again hiding it through the in a cryptographic way. So why is Mimble Wimble is different than those? Is it actually different? Yes, it is, because all of those things are still stored in the blockchain, and it requires enormous amount of the data to be processed and saved eventually. What Mimble Wimble does, it removes all the data, basically. Again, transaction cut-through technique. Really cool. But even though, as we discussed, even though Mimble Wimble is designed to prune and obfuscate transactions, one can still trace them, right, by using the history of from the special tracing equipment or application. So how can we avoid that? How can we completely hide this process? And for example, in Bitcoin, there is a gossip protocol is used, and transaction path could be identified by one who owns enough nodes, right? But in Mimble Wimble, and especially in Grin, I think it's the same as in Beam. A little bit different variation probably, but still, the transactions and IPs even are very hard to define because of the implementation of this Dandelion. Dandelion is we call it Dandelion, right? Dandelion is really the way to sort of mixed in order to make the transactions path to be really unclear. So first of all, the certain path is made from node to node. So while in BTC the nodes are sort of interchange information, and the transaction happens from node to node multiple times and so on. So in Mimble Wimble implemented cases, there is first a very certain path of those transactions between nodes, and then at the I think at the random point the new process happens, and this new process is sort of the explosion of the information from the last node to everybody else, a diffusion of information to everybody else. This is why it's Dandelion, and it looks like it, right? So in Mimble Wimble they have this. There are other features, many other features actually, except all of those which already talked, like for example Cuckoo proof of work mining, which is used in Grin, and basically it's a solution to use memory bandwidth rather than processor or CPU or GPU, and it makes it you ASIC resistance. You mean your mining. And in Beam, I think it's Equihash instead of Cuckoo cycle, Cuckoo proof of work mining, but basically the similar thing. So a lot of things similar like that, similar to that, are implemented, which is making the process, the blockchain principle, the blockchain structure pretty robust and sophisticated, and I would say quite well-rounded and elegant. So now again we have two coins, Grin already and Beam, Grin and Beam. So what are those differences between the two coins, since they are both on the Mimble Wimble protocol? And indeed there are some differences, and they are pretty crucial, although a lot of similarities as well. So you can find actually quite of a summary on the Beam website, but the main points are that first, they have different monetary policy, at least those differences which are interesting for us. Grin has the policy which implies that the inflation will be continued until forever, and always the new coins will appear, so it's not capped. For the Beam case, they are having like 263 million around coins, I think, and so they are capped, right? Also, governance and community. Grin is sort of non-profit, and people are working there. Still, they just like this technique and they want to make this to develop and so on. This is a startup. Beam is a startup. They pay salaries, as they say, and so on. So this is pretty different. And also in Grin we do have this romantic flavor when the founder is unknown. This Tom Elvis Jedusser is anonymous person, and basically there is no leader here. Sort of decentralization on the governance level. That's the difference. And of course there are other things, like they're written in different codes, and they like one has wallet, nice wallet, and another doesn't have yet wallet, or just the command line interface wallet for Grin, and so on and so forth. Many small but maybe important differences if you are a savvy investor. Okay, but you can look at those a little bit deeper. Of course, I don't want to make this video that long. The question is whether you want to invest or not, because again, this channel is about investments. So if you want, of course, please. The thing is, I don't want to give you financial advice as usual. My point is, those coins are hyped not because of the hype itself, in my opinion, but they are hyped because people, especially at the point right now, at the point when we have a lot of the information available, and sort of it spreads much faster than like 3-5 years ago, when people didn't know much about the crypto. Just very few people can like spot if Ethereum or XRP or Litecoin or some other giants which became giants eventually. So right now it's much easier to spot them, but at the same time there are a lot of the like empty, just only hype coins, and you really don't know which are those and which are the real gems. So what can you think about it is those like initiatives, those initial prep, like how to say that, the way that is built, the Mimble Wimble is built, it started from the developing. So basically there is an idea which was praised by the developers, even from Bitcoin side, and everybody started to say, wow, that's so cool. And then eventually other like masses, people from the media started to say, oh, developers are so hyped, why? And they are thinking, okay, it's probably because of the technology is cool. So they started digging, and instead, okay, that's probably really something new. And my point here is, I don't want to say that it's like Bitcoin 2.0 or something, but it's really provides some new step, new vision, new advantages, new possibilities for the blockchain, for the cryptocurrencies, their types. Like Ethereum, for example, at some point with their smart contracts, they made some new step forward, right? I don't want to say that Ethereum is better than Bitcoin and vice versa. I just want to say that it's some new evolution, and those coins are absolutely, in my opinion, absolutely something which is a new step in evolution of the blockchain industry as well. So we'll see how this will evolve, where they will go, but interesting. I think, me personally, I will probably buy some when I will have some technically acceptable levels for this deal. So we'll see, but in any case, hope that you find something interesting in this video, that you like that, and if yes, please continue watching the channel every day with the new updates and some interesting new reviews. I hope interesting as well. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you for watching, thank you for being with me, and safe trading. Goodbye.